The MMA community is not happy with recent comments made by TKO President Mark Shapiro regarding the UFC's use of the Apex. Fans have been vocal about wanting fewer events held there due to the lack of crowd noise on TV and the low energy in the arena. However, during the Morgan Stanley Technology, Media, and Telecom Conference, Shapiro made it clear that the Apex is here to stay, stating that the UFC could increase revenue by hosting more events there. MMA community member ACD MMA quoted him, saying that margins could be higher if the UFC reduced international and domestic touring events in favor of the Apex, where they own the venue. Additionally, MMA Fighting's Damon Martin shared another quote from Shapiro that frustrated fans even more, in which he claimed that when watching on TV, viewers can't tell whether an event is in a stadium, an arena, or the small but mighty Apex in Las Vegas.
You know, you're balancing the two. The UFC, that's what we balance every day. In fact, our margin could be higher if we decided to do less international events, maybe even less domestic touring events of our UFC events, and do them at the Apex in Las Vegas where we own the arena. And when you're watching on TV, you can't tell if you're in a stadium or an arena or you're at the small Apex, which we have in a small but mighty Apex, which we have in Las Vegas. Look, our job is to grow the brand. This is a nascent sport. It's mainstream now, but it's nascent. It's early days. But when you compare it to MLB, which has been around 100 years, and NFL, which has been around 100 years, we have a long way to go here. So we have to balance reach, engagement, brand strength with dollars, which of course most folks in this room are more focused on. But we're playing a long game here.
The MMA community quickly reacted to TKO President Mark Shapiro's comments, with Brendan Schaub calling him out, asking, "How much money do you need, TKO? You're ruining the sport." Other members, like Grabaka Hitman, mocked Shapiro's, claimed that fans can't tell if events are at the Apex, joking that fights could be in a stadium storage room or a parking garage with no noticeable difference. Bloody Elbow's Curtis Calhoun called the statement unbelievably delusional, while Drake Riggs joked, "Try not to lie, challenge failed." Many fans also criticized Shapiro, with one stating, "Mark Shapiro just admitted he doesn't watch the fights," and another pointing out that the difference between a stadium pay-per-view and the Tough Warehouse is obvious, both visually and audibly, as commentators were whispering during a recent event. Ariel Helwani also criticized the Apex, saying, "I truly feel like my soul is dying," and argued that every fighter in 2024 and 2025 deserves to compete outside of the Apex. Meanwhile, Damon Martin shared a quote from Shapiro hinting that the UFC's pay-per-view model could change with its next media rights deal, as Shapiro noted that while PPV works for the UFC, they are super flexible and open to new offers, possibly signaling a shift if a major platform presents a lucrative deal. Elsewhere in MMA news, Jon Jones was recently seen in a viral video where someone appeared to intentionally bump into him, sparking debate on whether it was staged or a real confrontation. Dan Hooker also made headlines after undergoing surgery for a fractured hand following his withdrawal from UFC 313, where he was originally scheduled to fight Justin Gaethje. Hooker had joked about fighting despite the injury, but was replaced by Rafael Fiziev, who eagerly accepted the short-notice fight despite initial hesitation from Gaethje's camp. In middleweight news, Caio Borralho called out Robert Whittaker for a fight at UFC 317, urging Whittaker to stop calling out higher-ranked opponents and instead face him on June 29th during International Fight Week. Whittaker, however, has multiple options, including a rematch with Jared Cannonier and a potential fight with Sean Strickland once his nose heals from his recent loss. Lastly, Bilal Muhammad reacted to Leon Edwards' comments about his title shot following UFC London, referencing Edwards' own long wait for a title fight and suggesting he should have to wait 3 to 4 years for a rematch.
I don't know what Leon's thinking, but because, like, Leon, you have a full 3 years before you could even think about getting a rematch. It's going to be a long 3 years of, fighting contenders for Leon. Like, I have my guy, the next guy in line anyway, I think is Shavkat. There's nothing I don't think he could do to skip Shavkat. I wouldn't allow that to even happen. Go out there, throw a cartwheel kick, spinning back fist, and then I'm still going to put LOL, he still sucks.
Tony Ferguson recently opened up about leaving the UFC after parting ways with the promotion and signing with the GFL, where he is set to fight Dylan Dennis in May. Despite previously stating he never wanted to fight elsewhere, Ferguson admitted on the Ariel Helwani show that packing up his UFC gear was an emotional experience, taking him days to adjust. He also revealed he was initially in serious negotiations for a boxing match against KSI, but ultimately decided to move forward with MMA, expressing frustration over his recent losing streak. Reflecting on leaving one of his gloves in the octagon, after his last UFC fight, Ferguson clarified that while he didn't intend to retire, he knew it could be his final appearance for the promotion. Meanwhile, UFC fight updates continue, with Chris Gutierrez now set to fight John Castaneda as a late replacement on this weekend's PFL card. Additionally, Raul Rosas Jr. will face Vince Morales at UFC Mexico, looking to extend his winning streak, while Morales aims to break his two-fight skid. The May pay-per-view featuring Bilal Muhammad and Jack Della Maddalena also has a new addition, with Navajo Sterling taking on Ivan Iran, as Sterling seeks his second UFC victory, while Iran looks to rebound from a previous loss. In lightweight action, Justin Gaethje is eager to bounce back from last year's knockout loss to Max Holloway as he faces Rafael Fiziev. Speaking to Shaq MMA, Gaethje promised fans a vintage performance, blending the chaos of his early career with his refined skill set and emphasized the importance of maintaining forward pressure like top champions. Elsewhere, concerns are rising over Alex Pereira's wrestling ability ahead of his fight against Magomed Ankalaev, with MMA veteran Matt Brown warning that Pereira has only faced favorable matchups and may struggle against a strong grappler. At UFC 313, Pereira, however, remains confident in his skill set, eager to prove himself against a dominant wrestler.
Alex has weaknesses, and he has to put in a lot of work to catch those weaknesses up. He has had favorable matchups. He hasn't went against great wrestlers or great jiu-jitsu guys or anything, great grapplers yet. Like, we know that he has these weaknesses. He needs to be putting in that sort of energy and time into making those weaknesses strengths, or at least minimizing those weaknesses. And it's hard to believe that he's doing that while doing, however many millions of other things, in Australia or, whatever it is that he's doing. I'm not going to say he's going to get exposed at some point, but it's going to be tested at some point. And I don't doubt that Ankalaev is going to try to test it. It's in his best interest to try to test it.
As fight week heats up, Magomed Ankalaev has shifted his stance on his strategy against Alex Pereira, now stating that he hopes Pereira is ready to wrestle for 25 minutes when they collide this Saturday. Additionally, Ankalaev told MMA Life that if he secures a victory, he has no issue granting Pereira an immediate rematch, emphasizing that he has never turned down rematches before. In response, Pereira spoke with the New York Post, acknowledging that this fight will be a true test of his grappling, highlighting his 4 years of training in the U.S. with Glover Teixeira to refine his wrestling skills. Confident in his abilities, Pereira turned the tables on Ankalaev, challenging him to stand and strike for 25 minutes while also proposing a $200,000 charity bet on the fight. However, Ankalaev declined, citing his faith and explaining that, as a Muslim, betting is forbidden, but he donates 2.5% of his wealth to charity annually as part of his religious obligations. He further suggested that their managers could handle charitable contributions in a private manner, wishing Pereira Ramadan Mubarak before concluding with, "See you soon." With all the back-and-forth talk, tensions are high, setting the stage for a fiery press conference on Thursday.